the serene town of Luver, Minnesota, the tragic death of a young woman named Carrie at her workplace in Blum's Park cast a dark shadow over the community. It was a case that, for years, remained an enigma wrapped in a web of perplexing clues and dead ends. The day Carrie was found, the park, usually a haven of tranquility and natural beauty, became a crime scene shrouded in mystery. The authorities arrived to a chilling sight. Carrie lay motionless, her life extinguished in the midst of her daily routine. She was a familiar and beloved figure in the park, known for her friendly demeanor and dedication to her job. As detectives combed through the scene, they uncovered a series of unusual clues. A broken wristwatch with a torn strap, a pack of cigarettes left carelessly on the ground. These items seemed out of place in the context of Carrie's life. She wasn't known to smoke, and the watch didn't belong to her. The items whispered hints of a struggle, a narrative of violence that culminated in tragedy. Yet, despite these tantalizing leads, the perpetrator remained a ghost, a shadow that slipped through the fingers of justice. The case grew cold as time marched on, leaving unanswered questions and a community haunted by the loss of one of their own. But fate, it seemed, wasn't quite finished with the story of Carrie's untimely demise. Years later, as dust gathered on the case files, a new team of detectives, armed with fresh perspectives and advancing technologies, reopened the investigation. Little did they know, they were on the brink of a breakthrough that would shake the very foundations of this long-standing mystery. The town of Luver, still bearing the scars of the past, watched and waited, hoping for closure, for justice for Carrie. As the new investigation unfolded, it promised to unravel the tangled threads of a case that had long confounded the best minds of the police department. In the heart of Minnesota, under the wide, open skies of Luver, Carrie Nelson's story began. Born on a cold December day in 1980, her life was a tapestry of small-town charm and close-knit community values. With loving parents, a younger sister, and a wide circle of friends, Carrie's early life was filled with warmth and laughter. Described by those who knew her as kind-hearted and empathetic, Carrie had an innate ability to sense and soothe the pains of others. Her nurturing nature led her to dream of a career in medicine, a path where she could extend her care to a broader canvas. Upon graduating from Luver's local high school, she enrolled in a college in North Dakota, her eyes set on becoming a doctor. It was there that she met Michael, a young man who would soon become an integral part of her life. Their relationship blossomed into an engagement, a promise of a shared future filled with love and hope. Balancing her college studies with a part-time job, Carrie found a position that seemed tailor-made for her, working at the National Park of Blue Mounds, not far from her hometown. The park, with its vast expanses of wilderness and breathtaking views, was a place that resonated with Carrie's love for nature. Her role involved selling tickets and guiding guests, a perfect fit for her warm and welcoming personality. Returning for her second season at the park, Carrie was more than just an employee. She was part of its lifeblood. The simplicity of the job, combined with the time spent amidst nature's beauty, brought her immense joy. It was here, in this idyllic setting, that the cruel twist of fate awaited her. As Carrie and Michael planned their future together, little did they know that their dreams would be cut short in the most tragic way. The date was May 20, 2001, a day that began like any other at the park, but would end in a way that would forever change the lives of those who knew and loved Carrie. May 20, 2001, dawned bright and clear over Blum's Park. The birds sang, and the sun cast dappled shadows through the leaves, unaware that it was a day that would be etched in infamy in the history of Luver. Carrie arrived at the park early, her spirits lifted by the crisp morning air and the anticipation of a day spent doing what she loved. This season, she had an added responsibility, mentoring Rebecca, a young intern who was new to the park's routines. The day proceeded uneventfully until noon, when Rebecca left for the main office across the park, leaving Carrie alone at the entrance booth. It was a routine split of duties, a pattern they had followed since Rebecca's arrival. Little did they know, This division would have dire consequences. Rebecca returned around 2:45 p.m., entering the booth through the back door. What she encountered was a scene that would haunt her for years to come. Carrie lay motionless on the floor, a pool of blood forming a stark contrast to the pristine surroundings. The shock was immediate and visceral, propelling Rebecca into a state of panic. In that moment of terror, Rebecca heard the front door creak open. Fearing the worst, that the assailant might still be near, she fled through the back door, her heart pounding as she sprinted home. Living on the park grounds, her father being the manager, she reached her house quickly and relayed the horrific discovery to her parents. Her father raced to the scene while her mother called the police. He arrived at the booth to find a haunting solitude, Carrie's lifeless body, and the unmistakable signs of a violent struggle. He secured the area as best as he could, waiting for the police to arrive, while grappling with the shock and grief of the loss. The police descended upon the park, marking the beginning of an investigation that would span years. They found Carrie behind the counter, where she had sold countless tickets to visitors, her joyous energy now replaced by an eerie stillness. The scene was chaotic. Items strewn about, a telephone receiver dangling off the hook, and fragments of a plastic chair scattered on the floor. These clues painted a picture of a brutal struggle, a fight for life that ended in tragedy. Among the chaos, detectives noted two peculiar items: a man's wristwatch with a torn strap and a pack of cigarettes. Carrie was known not to smoke, suggesting the cigarettes belonged to her assailant. The broken watch hinted at a physical altercation, perhaps torn off in the struggle. Yet these clues, as striking as they were, failed to lead to an immediate suspect. The question of who could have committed such a heinous act in this peaceful community loomed large, casting a shadow of fear and uncertainty over Blum's Park and beyond. In the aftermath of the discovery, Blum's Park transformed from a serene natural retreat into a complex crime scene. Detectives began to dissect every detail, every clue left in the wake of the tragedy, hoping to uncover the identity of Carrie's assailant. The scene was a perplexing puzzle. Among the scattered items, the detectives focused on two bank bags intended for transporting money, which were missing from the office. The cash register was also emptied. It was clear that robbery was a motive, but the violence suggested a personal angle or a confrontation gone horribly awry. The investigators' attention was drawn to the peculiar items found near Carrie's body. The men's wristwatch with its strap violently torn suggested a struggle fierce enough to rip it from the assailant's wrist. Then there were the cigarettes, an anomaly in the non-smoking Carrie's surroundings. The most intriguing clue, however, was the orange stone particles found near the body. The park manager identified them as fragments from a decorative stone that had adorned the registration desk. This stone was now conspicuously missing, leading detectives to speculate that it might have been the murder weapon. The absence of this stone, coupled with the splatters of blood on the walls and ceiling, painted a grim picture of the attack's ferocity. Further compounding the mystery were the significant amounts of money stolen and the absence of any surveillance cameras in the park, a reflection of its typically peaceful nature. This lack of monitoring meant that the detectives had to rely heavily on physical evidence and witness statements. Detectives interviewed park visitors and staff, hoping to gather any information that might lead to a breakthrough. A couple camping in the park reported seeing a white car with a brown vinyl top speeding away around 2:30 p.m., a detail that seemed inconsequential at the moment but would later prove crucial. As the detectives pieced together the timeline of events, the scope of their challenge became evident. The park's open access and lack of surveillance left them with a vast number of potential suspects and few solid leads. The forensic team meticulously collected fingerprints and DNA samples from the scene, hoping that among these, the key to solving the case lay hidden. Despite the multitude of clues, the identity of Carrie's killer remained elusive. The detectives faced the daunting task of sifting through the evidence, trying to find the thread that would lead them out of this labyrinth of mystery and into the light of justice for Carrie. As months turned into a year since the murder, the case of Carrie Nelson lingered in an unsettling limbo. The evidence collected was substantial, yet it failed to point decisively to any suspect. Luver's community, still reeling from the shock, desperately sought closure. It was during this period of uncertainty that a new, unexpected twist emerged. The lead came from a place far removed from the serene trails of Blum's Park, the grim confines of a local prison. An inmate, serving time for unrelated crimes, approached the authorities with a claim that would reignite the investigation. He alleged that his cellmate, Anthony Flowers, had confessed to being the perpetrator behind Carrie's murder. This revelation promised to be the breakthrough the detectives desperately needed. Anthony Flowers, the alleged confessor, had a history of criminal activity, predominantly bank robberies. This detail lent a degree of credibility to the claim, fitting the robbery element of Carrie's murder. Furthermore, Flowers had a record of escaping custody, adding to his profile as a potential suspect. Eager to pursue this lead, detectives delved into Flowers' background. They scrutinized his criminal history, looking for any connection to the park or to Carrie. The possibility of solving the case that had haunted Luver for over a year was tantalizing. However, as the investigation progressed, discrepancies began to surface. Flowers' DNA and fingerprints did not match any of the samples collected from the crime scene. Moreover, his detailed confession, as relayed by his cellmate, contained inaccuracies and contradictions when compared to the known facts of the case. The detectives realized that the confession might be a fabrication, a desperate attempt by two inmates to exploit the situation for potential gain. The $50,000 reward offered for information leading to the resolution of Carrie's case was a significant motivator. This false lead was a disheartening setback for the investigators and the community. It underscored the complexities of the case and the lengths to which individuals might go to manipulate the justice system. The road to finding Carrie's killer was proving to be more tortuous and fraught with obstacles than anyone had anticipated. As the dust settled on this lead, the case once again stalled. The sense of urgency and hope that had briefly flared up faded into the harsh reality of a cold case. Carrie's family, friends, and the people of Luver were left to grapple with the lingering question: who killed Carrie Nelson? As the years passed, Carrie's case became a haunting presence in the Luver Police Department, a constant reminder of justice unfulfilled. Despite the false leads and dead ends, the detectives refused to consign her case to the archives of forgotten mysteries. Then, in 2007, a new development in forensic science offered a glimmer of hope. Advancements in DNA analysis had reached a pivotal point. Techniques that were once limited in scope were now capable of extracting detailed genetic profiles from even the most minute samples. This breakthrough presented the investigators with an opportunity to revisit the physical evidence gathered from the crime scene, particularly the wristwatch and cigarette pack found near Carrie's body. The watch, which had been an enigmatic clue from the beginning, held the potential to unveil the identity of the assailant. Forensic experts re-examined it, using the latest DNA extraction methods. This time, they were able to isolate 3 distinct genetic profiles, one belonging to Carrie, and 2 others from individuals unknown. The discovery was a significant breakthrough. One of the unknown profiles was that of a male, the other a female. The presence of these profiles, especially the male DNA, suggested a direct link to the assailant. The investigators felt a renewed sense of purpose as they prepared to dive back into the case, armed with these new leads. Meanwhile, the second unknown profile, the female DNA, added an unexpected layer to the puzzle. It raised questions about the involvement of a second individual, perhaps an accomplice or a witness. The detectives knew that every piece of the puzzle was crucial in constructing the full picture of what happened to Carrie on that fateful day. With the new DNA profiles in hand, the detectives scored criminal databases, hoping for a match that would finally put a face to the elusive killer. The process was meticulous and time-consuming, but the prospect of bringing Carrie's killer to justice after all these years drove them forward. The community of Luver, having lived under the shadow of this unsolved crime, watched with bated breath as the detectives embarked on this renewed quest for the truth. The hope that had once flickered and faded was rekindled, igniting a collective longing for closure and justice for Carrie. As the detectives in Luver delved deeper into the DNA evidence, a breakthrough emerged, steering the investigation in an unforeseen direction. The DNA profiles extracted from the wristwatch were run through state and national criminal databases, but the results were initially inconclusive. The male DNA, which was of particular interest, yielded no matches in Minnesota's database. Determined to leave no stone unturned, the detectives expanded their search. Remembering the cigarette pack found near Carrie's body bore a tax stamp from South Dakota, they decided to run the DNA profiles through South Dakota's criminal database. This decision was about to alter the course of the entire investigation. In a twist that no one saw coming, the male DNA profile matched with a 35-year-old man named Randy Swan, a name that had never surfaced in the investigation before. Swan was a serial robber, currently serving a 30-month sentence in a South Dakota prison. At the time of Carrie's murder, he was a free man, his whereabouts on that day unknown. Swan's criminal record and current incarceration for robbery resonated with the robbery element of Carrie's case. The detectives felt a surge of anticipation. Could this be the missing link in the chain of events that led to Carrie's untimely death? Further investigation revealed that Swan owned a white car, similar to the one seen speeding away from the park on the day of the murder. This detail aligned with the witness testimony about the white car with a brown vinyl top. The detectives knew they were onto something significant. The connection was becoming clearer, but the detectives needed more. They began to meticulously piece together Swan's history, activities, and possible connections to Luver or the park. The picture that emerged was of a man capable of the violence that had claimed Carrie's life, but they needed concrete evidence to link him to the scene. Meanwhile, the community of Luver, once resigned to the possibility that Carrie's killer might never be found, now watched with a mix of hope and apprehension. The emergence of Randy Swan as a suspect was a shocking development, one that brought the prospect of resolution closer than ever before. The detectives knew they had to tread carefully, building a case that was watertight. They were acutely aware that any misstep could mean the difference between justice for Carrie and her killer walking free. The stakes were higher than ever, and they were determined not to let this opportunity slip through their fingers. With Randy Swan identified as a potential suspect, the detectives in Luver approached the next phase of their investigation with meticulous care. Every step had to be precise, every piece of evidence thoroughly examined. The weight of years of unresolved questions and the community's longing for closure rested heavily on their shoulders. Swan, still incarcerated in South Dakota, was unaware that he had become the focal point of a murder investigation miles away. The detectives began by examining his past, looking for any connection to Luver or to Carrie. They scrutinized his known whereabouts around the time of the murder, piecing together his movements and activities. The most compelling evidence came from Swan's own possessions. His wife, unaware of the grave suspicions surrounding her husband, unwittingly provided the detectives with critical pieces of the puzzle. She confirmed that the wristwatch found at the crime scene belonged to Swan, and she even admitted to wearing it occasionally, explaining the presence of her DNA on it. This revelation was a turning point in the investigation. It solidified Swan's connection to the crime scene and added credibility to the theory that he was involved in Carrie's murder. The detectives also learned about Swan's financial struggles and his history of substance abuse, adding possible motives to the case. Armed with this new information, the detectives approached Swan in prison. They hoped for a confession, or at least some indication of guilt. However, Swan was uncooperative and refused to speak without a lawyer, a move that further piqued the detectives' suspicions. Simultaneously, they began to piece together the events of May 20, 2001, reconstructing the timeline with Swan as the key figure. They hypothesized that he had entered the park with the intention of robbery, not anticipating Carrie's presence. A struggle ensued, resulting in Carrie's tragic death. As the investigation continued, the detectives also kept a close eye on Swone's upcoming release date. They were aware that once out of prison, he could become a flight risk, potentially complicating their efforts to bring him to justice. The town of Luver, once again, found itself gripped by the unfolding drama of the investigation. After years of waiting, the possibility that Carrie's killer might finally be brought to justice was both a relief and a source of deep-seated anxiety. The community waited with bated breath as the detectives prepared to make their move, hoping that this time there would be no escape from the long arm of the law. As the day of Randy Swone's release from prison drew near, the detectives in Luver intensified their efforts. They needed to solidify their case against him before he regained his freedom and potentially vanished. The evidence was compelling, but they knew that in court it would need to be incontrovertible. The detectives decided to confront Swone's wife with their suspicions. In a delicate, carefully navigated conversation, they revealed that they believed her husband was involved in Carrie's murder. The revelation hit her like a wave, leaving her shocked and tearful. Initially frightened that she might be implicated due to her DNA on the watch, she soon realized the gravity of the situation and began to cooperate fully. She allowed the police to search their home and provided more information about Swone's activities and possessions. Among the items she handed over were photographs of Swone, including one where he was seen driving a white car similar to the one spotted at the park on the day of the murder, and another showing him wearing the wristwatch, secured on the same notch as it was when found at the crime scene. As the detectives delved deeper, they uncovered more about Swone's troubled past, including his struggles with gambling and substance abuse. They learned about his financial difficulties, which could have driven him to commit robbery. Every new piece of information painted a clearer picture of a man who was capable of resorting to desperate measures. Meanwhile, the forensic team re-examined the evidence, comparing Swone's fingerprints to those found at the crime scene. Several matched, further linking him to the murder. This discovery was a significant milestone in the case, providing the tangible evidence needed to proceed with an arrest. The community of Luver, once resigned to the mystery of Carrie's death, remaining unsolved, now saw a resolution within reach. The prospect of justice for Carrie brought a sense of cautious hope to those who had known and loved her. As Swone's release date approached, the detectives prepared to make their move. They knew that the window of opportunity was narrow, and that the success of the operation hinged on precise timing and execution. The tension was palpable, both within the police department and throughout the town, as everyone awaited the outcome of what had become one of the most significant cases in Luver's history. On the eve of Randy Swone's release, the atmosphere in the Luver Police Department was charged with a mix of nervous anticipation and resolve. This was the moment they had been working towards, the culmination of years of investigation, hope, and setbacks. The detectives were ready to make their move. As the first light of dawn broke on the day of Swone's release, a team of detectives arrived at the prison. They had a warrant for his arrest, the result of painstaking investigation and irrefutable evidence that linked him to Carrie's murder. Swone was taken into custody, his expression one of disbelief as he realized that his past had finally caught up with him. The trial of Randy Swone was a high-profile event in Luver, drawing attention far beyond the small community. The courtroom was packed each day, with Carrie's family, friends, and residents of Luver, all seeking closure and justice. The evidence against Swone was laid out methodically. The DNA on the wristwatch, the fingerprints at the scene, his financial motive, and the corroborating testimony of his wife. Swone's defense team argued that he had lost the watch before the murder, suggesting that someone else had used it to frame him. However, this theory was weakened by the overwhelming forensic evidence and the inconsistencies in Swone's own alibis. As the trial progressed, the picture of what transpired that fateful day in Blum's Park became clearer. Swone, driven by financial desperation, had likely entered the park intending to commit robbery. A tragic confrontation with Carrie, who had unexpectedly returned to the booth, resulted in a violent struggle, culminating in her death. After days of testimony and deliberation, the jury returned their verdict. Randy Swan was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The courtroom, filled with a palpable mix of relief and sorrow, echoed with quiet sobs and sighs of closure. For the people of Luver, the verdict brought an end to a long, painful chapter. While nothing could bring Carrie back, there was solace in knowing that her killer would not walk free. Carrie's memory would live on, not only in the hearts of those who knew her, but also in the collective consciousness of the town. In the aftermath of the trial, life in Luver slowly began to return to normal. The park, once a crime scene, gradually reclaimed its place as a peaceful refuge. The case of Carrie Nelson, which had once seemed an unsolvable enigma, now served as a testament to the perseverance of justice, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.